The end of the morning on day 3 of the Hannah Gutierrez Reed Rust Armorer trial, we had 2 FBI examiners in for testimony. The second witness was a much shorter witness. It was a fingerprint examiner who found Hannah Gutierrez Reed's fingerprints on boxes of ammunition and explained why the ammunition itself or the rounds themselves are difficult to fingerprint and why fingerprints weren't recovered. The cross-examination also illuminated that some of the fingerprints weren't rolled super well, so it was really difficult to say, and that the owner of the prop house, PDQ Arm and Prop, Seth Kinney, his known prints were not submitted, so there's no way to know if his prints were on any of these ammo boxes or not. It seemed that they only focused it on people who were on set, which seems like an oversight to me, truthfully, because Seth Kinney was the one providing the boxes of ammo, and how a live round got on set is a question from day one. So if he's the one providing it, why not submit his known prints as well? They didn't. The defense is going to make a lot out of it. I don't know if it will matter at the end of the day when they are trying to prove that Hannah didn't do her job in checking the rounds before loading them into the gun, but we will see. It is the defense's job to introduce doubt, and that is exactly what Mr. Bowles has been doing through his or trying to do through his cross-examination. How successfully he's doing that is going to be up to the jury. The first witness this morning was the firearm examiner who did the destructive testing on the gun, meaning he took the gun, and a mallet and whacked it around in a bunch of different hammer cock positions, from a full cock to a half cock to a quarter cock to at rest. We heard lots about the different ways that the hammer was pulled back. And what we learned from that is the reason the destructive testing was tried is because of Alec Baldwin's interview in December. I know, and you know, that interview was with 2020 with George Stephanopoulos, wherein he said he did not pull the trigger. So they did that testing to see if that weapon could fire without the trigger being pulled, and it was determined that it could not. This was also the witness that tested the different rounds to see which rounds were live rounds, which rounds were dummy rounds, and look at the different types of gunpowder, though didn't do the chemical testing. One of the hundreds of rounds that were submitted was determined to be a dummy that was difficult to identify as a dummy round. It did not have the rattle that you're supposed to have. It did not have a bored hole in the side. It looked like live ammunition, but was inert inside. No gunpowder and an inert pin in the end of it. One round that looked like it was live. But there was a mix of different rounds. And even within the ammo boxes that were sent to the FBI, there were mixes of dummy rounds and live rounds within those ammo boxes, which should never have happened. And if Hannah had checked those, the things that did not rattle should not have gone in. But when Hannah gave her interview to law enforcement, which we will see later in this trial, we know that she said, "I shook the box." Well, if one round's live and the rest of them are dummies, you're going to hear them rattle. How do you know that one's not rattling if you just shake the whole box? But we will see that in further testimony. We are still just going through the foundation of the scientific witnesses before we really get to the more storytelling witnesses, the witnesses who were on set, the witnesses that were in the church, the witnesses that saw things, did things. And Sarah Zachary, the witness that apparently emptied out the rounds that were in the gun and threw the ammo away. So we'll get to all of that. The afternoon of day 3 of the Hannah Gutierrez Reed Rust Armorer trial got very spicy. We had the first percipient witness who was in the church when Helena Hutchins was shot and killed by Alec Baldwin. This was someone who was standing directly next to the director, shoulder to shoulder is how he described it. He was the grip for the camera that was in the church shooting the film. We saw footage from the Rust film that happened before the lunch break. This shooting happened after the lunch break. He talked about his concerns with safety on set. He talked about his issues with Dave Halls and approaching Dave Halls about issues with safety, and then Dave Halls walking away from him and him seeing nothing be done. He talks about the fact that he heard Hannah Gutierrez say after the lunch break that she had checked the weapon before the lunch break, but had not checked it after the lunch break, and handed it to Dave Halls, and Dave Halls said, "Cold gun," and then brought it into the church and gave it to Alec Baldwin. It was very heartfelt and sad testimony as he was talking about losing his friend Helena Hutchins, talking about Joel Souza being shot, talking about trying to stop the bleeding on Joel Souza's shoulder, seeing the bullet protruding by Joel Souza's shoulder blade. Because again, Helena Hutchins was standing right in front of Joel Souza, and the bullet went through Helena into Joel Souza and lodged in his shoulder. So they were both shot with the one round fired. And then the cross-examination got fiery, very, very fiery. I was surprised that defense counsel came after this witness so hard, got into him about his medical treatment, his civil lawsuit going on in this case, whether he was testifying to further that civil lawsuit, and why he was suing. Wasn't he suing for money? The witness said repeatedly that he was looking for justice for his friend. And he did talk about the issues he had with what production did, what Baldwin did, and of course, what Hannah Gutierrez Reed did. And we saw the attorneys getting very fiery with each other at the end of the day with their objections over this witness. As we get into more percipient witnesses, a lot of the witnesses on this list have civil lawsuits pending. And I think we're going to see more of this style of cross-examination, though I think some of these witnesses can be allies to the defense. The defense wants to put this on production. These witnesses are pissed at production too. They're suing production too. They're not thrilled with production. They're also not thrilled with this defendant. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you for being a law nerd. For deep dives into the stories that I covered here, you can find them on my YouTube channel at The Emily D. Baker and The Emily Show podcast. I stream every Tuesday and Thursday. The podcast goes live on Wednesdays. And if you want to stay in the loop with everything I'm doing, receive the fastest notifications out there, and get more Law Nerd community, join me at lawnerdapp.com, our free app for iOS and Android.